Hello and welcome back to module number 5, and in this module we are going to talk about two things. In a later video recording I'm going to talk about design, and in this module I'm going to talk about form, HTML form that we often see in any website. But the issue for me is the idea of validation of the form, and we usually do that by using JavaScript. So what is a form? Everyone knows what it is, and we see it all over the place. You often ask us to fill out a form by using our typing in or selecting the right answer or doing multiple things in order for them to get our information. In HTML, the action that takes place in the form is usually consists of a form, tag, and close the tag in order for us to apply that. In that action, usually we have the input type, which is define one line input in the field of the text. So in this case, we are giving the user the ability to write his own personal name or last name or so on. And the issue is that the input element has many different forms and different abbreviation and use when we are using it. We can have it as defined, it can has as a radio or submit form that we will go over. So, for example, there is another aspect of the action attributes that is idea of the action. You submit the form to the database in order for it to keep the data in a record that will be allowed to the website company or the website user to keep track of who filled out his or her form. So when you are submitting a form, the location of a web page must be addressed and be addressed by the form itself in order for it to apply. There's two methods of submitting a form. One is get and the other one is post. The get is the data sent from a form for applied to the URL specifically in the action attributes. The post, data sent to the form, is not attributed to the URL, and it is the action attribute. And I will show you the difference between them. So the get asks the server page or data, and so it is a request basically. A request that allowed us to send this information to a query string. The post, on the other hand, submit the data to a web server and retrieve the server response, which is the preferred way to do that. Why? So the get usually embedded a lot of requirements. It is not quite long. It has limited length. And so the URL cannot contain special characters without encoding. So private data in a URL can be seen or modified by the user. So when you click and the form is based on a get, it will cause some problems and the user will be able to see it, which is something that we try to avoid. So get versus post, it is a get harmless, but data will be reassembled when we are doing a reload. Bookmark, in get it can be bookmarked, but the post in comparison cannot be bookmarked. Security, which is probably the most important aspect, is less secure. In post, the security is much safer, and as a result it allowed us to make sure that the user can, example, give information that is restricted. So the action, as you can see in the action itself, HTML index.html, user1 equal value, which means that I am embedded the form inside. So we have name, food, and submit. So we have user name 1 is equal value and name 2 equal value in order for us to get. This is a simple way, and it will show in the browser what you have submitted. In a post, this is where technology comes in, which means that in this case, I'm using the PHP in order for it to retrieve the data, store it, and then convert the data to a database so it will have no interference on the way. Next is the validation. Before HTML form is submitted, usually it's becoming a standard that the JavaScript can provide validation. Why is it important? We want that the user will provide us the full information in order for us to verify it. So it is not a form valid, the form is not submitted unless the errors are fixed, and this is how JavaScript apply into it. So this client side, we have JavaScript validation. We check to see if the user actually submit the form as we requested. It goes to the browser, and then from the browser it goes to validation, store in the database. We have application validation, and then go back to validate. So the JavaScript validation opens up before the form is submitted, and this is again way for us to not use the communication so long it is based on the user on computer or phone or every other form. And so this is becoming a standard way to validate the form. If creating a web form, make sure that the data submitted is validated and its correct format. This client-side validation gives the user faster feedback. So in this class, we will follow on the client side of validation using JavaScript. So what do we validate in a form? So the JavaScript allowed us to check the fields that are required left empty. Was the validated email address entered? Was a valid date entered? What was text entered in numerical field, which can be a problem? Were numbers entered in a text field? And did the number entered have a correct range? So the issue is, in JavaScript, is that on charge events started to happen. So in this case, on charge, I can validate, is the validation, email validation, did the user provide us with an email, and is the address is complete. It has @, it has dot, and it has some structure that we can recognize using JavaScript to validate it. Your form must have a submit action in order for the user to submit. So on submit, event will raise and you will submit it on the code on the form. So you basically, the handler returns false, the form submitted will be cancelled. If it's true, the form will submit it and the execution will take place. In this case, in the bottom, I created again what we will learn later on in this class about PHP, the process of PHP, gather this information and return to validation using it. So on submit event handler, this passes the form in this idea. On submit, return validation. This function basically create variable for each field that needs validation. So it allowed us to finally return input validate from the event handler in order for us to do that. So a function validation, it is basically a template. A template we will start to go over. So if a test function, something is wrong, message a new error, validate input false. So if it's the second if condition, we will test the second if condition, and again something is wrong, and otherwise it will return valid. So we use two if conditions in order for us to do that. So check the textbooks field could be done with a simple text of text length. How long did the user who used our form, how long is it? If it's equal 0, we will call him back and say, hey, you did not fill the form. We can also check the select field to see if the option has been selected. And the same thing, if the user did not select the form or the option that we give him, we can call him back, say, you did not do that. And we can do an idea of check true, and in radio bottom, we can also check to see if it's true. So this is part of the way to do it. So require fields are really important, and this is something that you need to think about when you are starting to design your own form. What are the most important fields that you are most concerned? Is it the email? Is it the website? Is it the country? Is it the name? Each one of us has different understanding, and you will make your own decision based on it. So a good usability practice from the form design is to make the user fill out necessary information. Don't over ask more and more information, will make it unusable. And the additional good practice would mark the fields that require from the form. Many spell out the requirement of or start differently. It's up to you. One of the things that you will be asked to do is testing for validate input. So if a text box you created ask for email, and test the text enter is validate email, and so you have the ability to do that, and you have the ability to control or validate it. A regular expression can be test to input text. For example, a telephone number. If it's a US number, this is the way to validate the numbers, because we have a structure which is 334, which is 3 the area code, 3 the middle number, and then the end 4 numbers, or email. In this case, I am giving it 0 to 9, A to Z, capital or not capital, at is the sign for everything. And again, this is how I apply it in order for me to produce validate email address. Currency, again, the same technique, but I'm changing the rotation here, because if it's a dollar sign, this is what I want it to show in my validation. Example of a regular expression. Test to see if a text is a number. Return true if the number is false otherwise. Does it match the patterns? And again, this is what I try to do in order for it to validate. What happens when we have multiple validation? A web form may have more than one test. For example, a textbook for age. It might require a field. It might require a number. It might give us the option of range 0 to 120. Order for the validation form general to the most specific. So you need to modify your function, so it will be a good idea to write separate function for each type of validation, generalization for each function. place those frequency use validation function in their own external JavaScript file. You're going to run into troubles, and I know that in the middle of the night I will get 3,000 emails. I got error, text message error. So again, try to understand what is the error. Try to validate what you have done. Try to make sure that it is consistent with the idea of the form itself and what it is entail. So testing the web form, first test that the required fields must be provided, then test the field that need validation input such as phone number or email address or dates. Make sure that the error message are appropriate and specific for each error. So the JavaScript form or validation form, JavaScript can be used to validate it. And I will give you an example in Canvas to show that in order for you to do that, but you need to customize it. Do not just copy and paste. This is not the idea of the class. I want you to work on customization, that you will feel that this is something that you created based on the guidelines, based on something that is actually working. So I'm going to give you examples, and I want you to think about that and then try to apply that into your own work. So the function below, check if a field has been left empty. If the field is blank, alert box message will come out and it will say first name must be filled out, and this is what is the message. So in this case, this is where it goes. So we have a script that says what it has, and then it has a form name. A form is the part of the form that we are creating. First name, and submit the form. We are closing the form. As you can see here, we are closing the form. So when we do not fill out the form and we submit, it will come up and say first name must be filled out in order for you to continue. So again, it's going to be processed and return to this answer. Email validation, some of the things that we are often concerned. So the function check to see if the content has a general syntax of an email. And so the context of an email or the syntax of an email has to have the @ sign with a dot. So this is part of 2 characters in the end. So in this case, the form validate form, and then ask if it consists, and it will apply not validated email in order for us to do that. So as you can see, I define variable x, and I define variable adopts, and I define variable adopts with regard to what it consists, and I also gave it the if condition. So if condition is not fulfilled in less than 1, +2, or +2 smaller than x, it will show not validate email address. So in this case, the validation has to go through, and this is the entire structure. Again, I am giving you the entire structure. Check it, first of all, check to see if there is no error messages. If there are, try to understand what is the error that you got. If it doesn't have error, I want you to customize it. Think how you can customize it. In this case, the email is one part. You can combine first name and email together. Maybe that will validate it. But I want you to customize, think how can you customize your form. So in this case, the result, this is the input, and this is how it will look. So homework assignment. Design your first HTML form and use a JavaScript to validate the user input. Then post it on your website. So I want to see a page that has a form and validation of the form. So if I will not type and I will go and submit, it seems to me that you do not use the JavaScript to validate that. Next week, we are going to start with PHP. So I want you to start reading PHP, and I will give you more information as we go along. So that's it for the JavaScript and validation form. I hope it makes sense. If not, please ask any questions. Otherwise, have fun.